I remember once a couple years ago, for whatever the reason was, I went to downtown Chicago on one of those afternoons when the light is sort of gray and the cold is just a little bit there. And it was one of those busy afternoons as I was walking up Michigan Avenue. And if you've been there to Michigan Avenue on one of those sort of gray and cold days when the sidewalks are crowded, you know that along the street there, things seem to sort of flow. There's almost a current that will carry you up the sidewalk. You're surrounded by the hissing of the bus brakes and the honks of the horns, the diesel fumes that sort of waft across you, and you're surrounded by all of these people, the half-overheard conversations on the cell phones at top volume, the thumping of the bass from the headphones around you, and the paths that cross and shoulders that just about jostle you, as you all sort of flow up the sidewalk there on Michigan Avenue. And so we were going along with all these things happening around us, and as we were flowing, came a point when the crowd sort of swelled a little bit. Almost like we slowed down and we sort of swelled a little bit, and then we sort of broke around this bench and a planter that were in the middle of the sidewalk, and we broke around and rejoined on the other side. And sitting on that bench was a young woman, wearing a sort of tattered trench coat wrapped around her with her child, a small child, pressed up against her, just sitting like an island in the middle of the flow of these people in the sidewalk. And they were asleep. She was sitting upright, her head sort of held regally as she held this child tight up against her collarbone, wrapped in this coat in the middle of Michigan Avenue. And I looked back as we went past, and I don't know why I remember her asleep there on the bench in downtown Chicago. I don't know why. She has snagged my imagination and why I still remember her from years later, because just like you, the truth is I have seen and passed by countless, literally, I cannot count the number of people in Chicago, South Bend, Valparaiso, who might be in a situation like hers, wearing a tattered sort of trench coat. I can't count them because I don't see them always. We're taught that our gazes are supposed to slide by, right? We're not supposed to see. We have to be careful about who we connect our eyes with, especially if you're walking in downtown Chicago on Michigan Avenue. We have to be careful about where your eyes might snag, because then you might be asked some difficult questions. We're taught we're supposed to walk on by. And like you, there certainly have been opportunities. I've placed a coin in an outstretched cup or placed a folded bill into an outstretched hand, but how many more I have not, I can't even begin to count. And I can't count because I haven't noticed them, but there was something about her. Something that sort of stuck with me all of these years. And so I suspect that if you, like me, are aware in this sort of a general sense of how many people we have been past and how many people have been there, you, like me, might come to a gospel like this and have a sense of, oh, for I was poor, and I was hungry, and I was naked, and I was thirsty, I was in prison. And you, like me, might have that sinking sensation of, I missed him. The Jesus whom I love, and I know you, I know how head over heels you are for the Jesus who has found you, the Jesus who is transforming your life, the Jesus who is making a difference in you and in the world. I know how much you love him. And the idea that we might have missed him leaves us, when in fact, as you heard this, you might have wanted to do that, except, we're at church, and if somebody saw me do that, then they'd know something was wrong. So let's just all do that together, shall we? Everybody just go, oh. Which is a crazy thing, by the way. to think that we can't do that here. This is exactly where we're supposed to bring all our broken pieces. This is exactly where we're supposed to be when we're hurting, because we are supposed to be our full and honest selves here, because we are a community that is based on forgiveness. But this idea, the heartbreak that maybe we missed Jesus, that's hard to hear, isn't it? And we come to this gospel as a story of judgment, a story of the end of times when there will be a reckoning and there will be a judgment. But always in the Bible, stories of future judgments are opportunities for present adjustment. Let me say that again. The stories of judgment are always for us an opportunity and a call to present adjustment. And this comes at the end of a long series of answers to a simple question. Jesus was asked by the disciples, so when will things end? When was the world going to end and you're going to come back, and how are we going to know it? And Jesus has given a long series of don'ts. He says, don't think there's a timetable. Don't think there's a to-do list. Don't think there's check boxes that lead us to the end, and don't think that you're going to know when it's coming. Don't lose hope while you wait. Don't waste the time that you are given. Don't be so afraid that you are paralyzed, and don't waste the opportunity to know and love others in Christ's name. And now at the end of all of these don'ts, Jesus turns it around and says, but yes, there will come a time. And he reminds us that, yes, there is a king who is to come, but he just doesn't look like the king we expect. And he shows up in all the places we don't expect. And doesn't that sound like God anyway? Our God is the one who constantly and relentlessly shows up in places that we don't expect him. Our God is the one who never stays where we want him safely boxed up. Our God is the one who is constantly finding us in those broken places. And our God is the one who reaches into every dark corner. And this God, this King, this Jesus is the one who is to come. This king shows up where he doesn't belong. But this is the king who speaks to us today, because in just a couple verses, in just a couple days or so, Jesus is going to arrive in Jerusalem where he's headed all along, and while he's there, he's going to be hungry and thirsty. He's going to be put in prison. He will be stripped naked so the soldiers can beat him. He will be sick at heart in the Garden of Gethsemane. He will be strung up on the cross as a criminal, hated by all, a convicted traitor and treasonous. He will die there for us. As the lost, the least, the littlest, and the last, Jesus is going to all those dark places. And Jesus is the one who says, comforted me. I was hungry, and you gave me something to eat. I was thirsty. You gave me something to drink. I was naked. I was in prison. I was the lost, the last, the least, and the littlest. We have a king who shows up in all the wrong places. And that king who is to come is the king who has been here all along. That's what Jesus is telling us today. So whatever it is that you are going through, whatever it is that makes the nights dark and those days too short, whatever it is that leaves you broken and hurting, whatever it is that makes you feel like you must be the lost and the least and the last and the littlest, Wherever it is that you are hungering and thirsting, you are hurting and in prison, whatever it is that you are going through, simply knows this. We have a king who shows up in all the wrong places. We have a king who is to come, and he is already here. Wherever you are, whatever it is, the king is there. Thanks be to God.